Let's take a look at every Europa League final from 2002 and see what Premier League flops have lifted that trophy. 2002, Jon Dahl Tomasson. Alright, so starting off this list with Jon Dahl Tomasson, the Danish striker who scored 2 in a 3-2 win over Borussia Dortmund, as Feyenoord lifted the trophy in their own stadium. As we all know, Tomasson is one of the greatest European strikers of the 21st century. During his one season at Newcastle during the late 90s, he looked like he'd been plucked straight out of Sunday League, 4 goals in 35 games in England, and then he goes on to win UEFA Cups, Champions Leagues and World Cup bronze shoes. 2003, Maniche. I don't know who or what turned up on loan at Stamford Bridge during the 05-06 season, because it definitely wasn't the Maniche that had been revving up international tournaments for Portugal and lifting European Cups with Porto. An integral part of this Jose Mourinho side, which beat Celtic in the UEFA Cup final before following it up with Champions League glory 12 months later. Maniche eventually ended up at Chelsea. He played 8 games and looked out of breath after 6 minutes. 2004, Momo Sissoko. Remember Momo Sissoko? He didn't do much during his 3 years at Anfield, but hey, he was part of Rafa Benitez's Valencia side, which won a League and Cup double, beating Didier Drogba's Marseille 2-0 in the UEFA Cup final. 2005, Yuri Zhirkov. Yeah, Yuri Zhirkov was playing the UEFA Cup final 14 years ago, and this man is still not retired. Christ above, that man is probably going to end up in a wheelchair before he's 45. CSK Moscow beat Sporting Lisbon 3-1 in their own back garden back in May 2005. 4 years later, Zhirkov was stumbling around Stamford Bridge, struggling to come to terms with a brand of football that wasn't Russian. 2006, Jesus Navas. This was a weird final, Middlesbrough versus Sevilla. For Christ's sake, Stuart Parnaby and Lee Cattermole were playing in this one. Borough had their arses handed to them on a plate, losing 4-0. The likes of Daniel Alves would go off to enjoy a glittering career. The homesick Jesus Navas clung to Seville for dear life before finally taking the plunge at Manchester City in 2013. For £50 million, you would expect more than 4 goals in 123 games. I mean, come on. 2007, Christian Poulsen. Sevilla lifted the trophy the next year yet again, beating Espanyol on penalties, meaning Christian Poulsen was the UEFA Cup winner. 3 years later, the man was practically costing Roy Hodgson his job through a string of hopeless displays of the heart of midfield for Liverpool. 2008, Andrei Arshavin. Yes, I know Andrei Arshavin scored 4 at Anfield and the winner against Barcelona. That alone would be enough to have a statue built at most clubs, but still, this man was once a club record signing at Arsenal, and I think, considering the hype, this man was a flop. Anyway, 2008 was his year, blitzing Euro 2008 and lifting the UEFA Cup for Zenit St. Petersburg, beating Rangers 2-0 at the Etihad Stadium. 2009, Razvan Arat. The 2009 UEFA Cup final, possibly the most understated and forgettable showpiece of all time. Shakhtar Donetsk versus Werder Bremen in Istanbul. I bet you've forgotten some of the lads who played that day, like Fernandinho, Willian, Mesut Ozil. Anyway, so did Shakhtar's Razvan Arat, a Romanian defender who stank up the joint at West Ham, while Marcelo Moreno was on the bench, a striker who couldn't score on 12 attempts at Wigan. 2010, Diego Forlan. It's weird to think Diego Forlan was a Premier League flop. This is a name that does not belong in this pantheon of turnips alongside the likes of Christian Poulsen and Razvan Arat. I'm sorry, but Forlan was a truly world-class player. Just for whatever reason, he looked like he was playing with boots on the wrong feet at Old Trafford. He scored both goals in his 2-1 win over Fulham and Hamburg though. 2011, Fernando. At the 2011 Europa League final, where was it? Dublin. Finally, the stadium could welcome some world-class talent to the pitch to give us something else to watch other than Shane goddamn Long. All Portuguese affair, Porto 1, Braga 0, with future Man City midfield waste of time, Fernando pulling strings in midfield. 2012, Radamel Falcao. He scored the winner Dublin, and he was back at it again a year later. This was when Radamel Falcao was in his peak. If we'd had this Falcao in England, the one scoring twice in a 3-0 final win over Athletic Bilbao, before scoring a hat-trick to demolish the champions of Europe in the Super Cup 2 months later, we might have seen this man grab a few golden boots. Instead, injuries robbed us of that, and just like Varane, both Man United and Chelsea wrestled over a broken shell of a man. 2013, Marco Marin. That's how to Chelsea's Europa League success over Benfica 6 years ago. I guess Marco Marin was on the bench. Was he a Premier League flop? I mean, he played about 6 minutes. 2014, Federico Fazio. Sevilla yet again won a Europa League final in penalties, beating Benfica after 120 goalless minutes in Turin. Federico Fazio was soon signed by Tottenham and was goddamn woeful. Honestly, one of the worst defenders that club has signed in a long time. 2015, Stefan Abia. Another winner with Sevilla, helping the Spaniards to a 3-2 win over Dnipro in Warsaw 4 years ago. Stefan Abia was in recuperation mode, having traumatized himself during 2 hellish years at QPR. The 33-year-old is now making cash on the back arse of China with Wulamzal FC, with the likes of relegation and Jay Bothroyd all seeming like a terrible dream. 2016, Gregor Zhirkov. I really don't know what happened to Gregor Zhirkov. He won 2 Europa Leagues in a row, was named to the Liga Team of the Season, signed for PSG, rotted on the bench, then ended up West Brom under Alan Oh wait, no, that actually explains it then. He was pretty horrific at the Hawthorns, getting relegated without a fuss, in a side that seemed to think squad bonding caps and robbing taxis were one and the same thing. 2017, Matteo Darmian. The 2017 Europa League final, Ajax losing to Manchester United. Have a rematch now, lads, and just see what happens, because I can tell you now, there is not a chance in cat's hell that Ajax are going down to a team with Matteo Darmian at left back. Not again anyway. 2018, Philippe Luis. And finally, to last year, Atletico Madrid beating Marseille 3-0. Felipe Luis never made it off the bench, but sure, he's probably used to that. He spent a season at Chelsea where they showed him about as much respect as he got that ball boy.